All right, we are back. This is the fourth part of the 5 Foundation series. And now we're talking about hormones. Hormones are so very important and it does not get the attention that it deserves. But here's the thing, it's more than just your sex hormones, more than just the testosterone, the estrogen, and progesterone. It encompasses all the parts of the body, okay? So hormones controls every single function in the body. It's made of a bunch of glands that produce certain hormones. It's called the endocrine system. So I'm not gonna get like too micro detailed in this. I don't want you to go glassy-eyed. But this is the thing that I want you to understand. The detox and gut repair, the nutrition, the fitness, it all affects your hormones. And so there's a lot of pieces that are interconnected. So when we look at the pituitary gland, this is the gland that produces the hormones that stimulate other glands. I'll give you an example. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So this is produced from the pituitary. A lot of people think that the thyroid stimulating hormone, the TSH, they think that that is a thyroid hormone. It actually is not. It's not produced by the thyroid. The pituitary gland produces it, and then it goes from here to the thyroid gland to stimulate the thyroid gland to make its hormones, T4, T3, and then there's certain things that happen that converts it into the active form of each of those, free T4, free T3. So this is what happens in the thyroid gland. The pituitary also stimulates the adrenals. It stimulates the pancreas. It stimulates the ovaries through these stimulating hormones, okay? It's important that we understand this because when we have hormonal imbalances, we need to know at what level are you having the imbalances. So for instance, if you are diabetic, you have a hormone issue. Your issue is with insulin. Now, is it the fact that you have a pancreas issue, right? Because pancreas, it makes insulin, but it also makes glucagon, which gets rid of the glucose. It helps the body really utilize the glucose is what it does. And so there needs to be a balance here. But do you have a primary pancreas issue, or do you have an insulin receptor issue where you're just not sensitive to the insulin? You've become resistant. So now the pancreas has to work extra hard to make a bunch of insulin so that you can get rid of the glucose or incorporate it and utilize the glucose. It gets complicated, okay? But I just want you to understand that all of these things are interconnected. Your adrenals, you've heard the term adrenal insufficiency or adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure. What does that mean? That means that you're not able to produce a lot of the hormones that the adrenal gland produces, like cortisol, androgens, glucocorticoids, right? And so there's adrenals affects a lot of things. It affects energy level. It affects your blood pressure because it controls the sodium and potassium ratios and interconnectivity. So the adrenals also affects sleep and how well you sleep, when you wake up, when you go to bed. It also affects melatonin because it has an inverse reaction or an inverse relationship to melatonin. So I've seen issues where people have chronic fatigue during the day. They're not able to get to sleep. And there's nothing worse than being chronically tired and not being able to get to sleep. And then when we look at the adrenal testing, which we're going to talk about testing in just a second, we're seeing that their cortisol levels are high at night when they should be low. They're not able to get to sleep. If they're too low, then they're chronically tired throughout the day. And so we have to understand the relationship of this to really understand why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. When we look at the ovaries and the testes, right? We have women that are going through menopause, or men as they get older, their testosterone drops and they're having issues with erectile dysfunction or lack of motivation, or you start gaining that belly fat. This is an issue with estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, things of that nature. We're told that each of these sex hormones are specific to one gender, but in actuality, they're important in both genders. But what we want to understand is what should the optimal levels be? For a man, the optimal levels for testosterone are a lot higher than in a woman. For a woman, optimal levels of estrogen are going to be higher than a man, but both sexes need both. So we need to understand the relationship of how these are affecting our symptoms. This can be confusing, no question about it. So how do we approach it? Well, we want to make sure that, again, we test, we do not guess. We don't want to just assume, oh, I don't have any hormones. I hear that so often. Or my hormones are this or that just because we feel like they are because of our symptoms. No, we want to test these things. And there's specific ways to properly test them. Sometimes we need a blood test. So there's certain hormones, your thyroid hormone, right? Insulin levels. These hormones need to be tested via the blood because they give us a more accurate picture. Now, if we want to look at how we're metabolizing certain hormones, then we may want to do a urine test where we can actually see the different stages of metabolism, and it gives us a lot more information. There are some that we want to track the levels throughout the day. Perfect example, your adrenals. We want to do a 4-point analysis of things like your cortisol. So for instance, the adrenals, if we want to analyze your cortisol levels, we don't want to just do a one-time test throughout the day with a blood test. What we want to do is we want to check it 4 times during the day because we want to see their circadian rhythm. So we would need to do a 4-point cortisol test. And you can do that via saliva or you can do it via urine. So we have to know what we're looking at. We have to focus on why we're checking those things. So that way we know the appropriate test to check to give us the information that we want. Now, once we understand our hormones and we know the imbalances, now the question becomes, what do we do with that information? Well, we have to put it back into balance. Now, we believe in handling hormones a lot differently than most doctors. What we want to do is rather than just checking all your hormones in the beginning and then just writing a prescription for whatever hormone's out of whack, what we want to do instead is we really want to utilize the detoxification process, the gut repair, the nutrition strategy, even the fitness strategy, so that way your body maximizes the production of its own hormones and balances it naturally. In my opinion, this is where we get the true effect because the most effective and the safest hormone is the hormone that your own body produces. Now, don't get me wrong, hormone replacement, as long as it's in a natural form, that can be a game changer. It definitely can be helpful. I'm just not a big believer in just starting out there because I really want to see what we can get your own body to produce. We want to make sure that all these glands are functioning properly so that we can maximize and balance it from a natural standpoint, because your body has everything that it needs to be able to do that. And then we're checking levels to make sure that we're optimizing, because at that point, if we need to help it out a little bit, we have that ability. But let's start with getting your body back into balance by connecting all of these things first.